Hi, I'm Don Cantor, former co-director of JLIC at Johns Hopkins University and current director of the Richmond Jewish Learning Experience in Richmond, Virginia.
And I'm Alex Ozar, co-director of JLIC at Yale University, and this is the Torah JLIC podcast. JLIC supports thousands of young Jews in their college years and beyond, providing them with the nourishment they need to sustain an upward trajectory of Jewish commitment and growth as they enter the broader world. And the animating engine of that effort that has always been and will always be Talmud Torah, high-level, richly meaningful, thoughtfully creative Torah learning, ambitiously attuned to the realities of where our students are. On the Torah JLIC podcast, we hope to share some of that Torah with you. Thanks for listening.
Hey Alex, how's it going?
I'm doing all right, Don. It's good to see you. How are you?
Doing great, getting ready for Pesach. What do you got for us today?
Well, this is what I'm thinking about, Don. It's been on my mind for a long time. And something I want to work through. And something I think really basic to the ethos of JLIC and what it's about and who we are. I think that JLIC is incredibly, pointedly, and by design, nerdy. We're total nerds. I actually think that the genealogy is important. There was a time when JLIC, we're not called directors or co-directors. I think originally the title was Torah Educators, and the image founded by Rabbi Nachum Schrader, who was Rosh Yeshiva at the time. The model was like send people to campus, and they'll set up a base medrash, and people will have a space to come and do high level yeshiva style learning even while they're on campus. And they go to yeshiva in Israel, they come back, or they go to yeshiva afterwards, a pathway towards that. In either direction, they have a space like they can be in yeshiva while they're at Yale or Princeton or Rutgers or Maryland. And so over time, obviously, it became apparent that there was so much more to the job. There's providing infrastructure and various forms of pastoral and emotional care and spiritual care, and just putting on good quality social programming, and just doing all of the work, fundraising, and the logistics that go into running a community. And so director felt like the more appropriate professional title. But there's something about that original ethos that is still very much baked into the DNA of who we are. Actually take one very vivid illustration of this on a different register. Purim was not too long ago. We're recording this on March 26th, the week before Pesach. Purim was not too long ago. And JLIC has a policy. Throughout the year, it is totally kosher, totally fine to serve alcohol to and drink with our students, with appropriate measure, and following basic laws and policies of whatever region we're in. But that's totally kosher in principle. Juniors, seniors, people, graduate students, people over 21. On Purim and Simchas Torah, where there is a deeply culturally embedded, pervasive culture of heavy drinking in the Orthodox Jewish community, JLIC policy is we may not serve any alcohol whatsoever. We may not drink whatsoever with our students. And at least several emails and WhatsApp messages goes out before every Simchas Torah and every Purim that very clearly states that there is a zero tolerance policy. And if you are caught serving alcohol to your students, you will be fired immediately. So we put on our Purim Suda every year. When it happens, it's not on spring break. We do it at our house. And our students know that there's no alcohol at our Suda. Now, look, obviously, what they bring in their water bottles, I'll just tell everybody here, I'm totally upfront with you all. I'm not checking what's in their opaque water bottles. And they need to hydrate. I get it. But we're not serving alcohol. And look, I would just, I'm really genuinely not calling anybody out. I have tremendous respect for my colleagues in other organizations in this kind of space. Other organizations do things very differently on Purim and Simchas Torah and throughout the year. And their spaces are ones where people show up and expect, there's a lot of alcohol, free flowing. There's a more of a party kind of atmosphere. And, it more closely resembles, it's not exactly what you get in a frat party, but it's more towards that direction. And what we do at JLIC, just everyone knows, is like just kind of nerdy. And we are just focused at the end of the day on doing serious Talmud Torah and on rigorous observance. Like we run the daily minyan, and we are having clavruses with students, and we're offering shiurim, which are like serious and rigorous. Sometimes this is actually it's a hard proposition because it's elitist. The vast majority of Jews have no they don't know what high level Talmud Torah is. They're not prepared for that. They're not equipped for it through no fault of their own. And even for students who went through the 12 years of yeshiva day school education and who's spent time a year in Israel, 2 years in Israel, what they want to be doing right now when they've come to college, it's just not learning Gemara. That's just not what's on the table for them right now. Not what they're interested in. And they want
Alex, can I stop you for a second? I want to ask you, is this elitist? Like maybe it's not accessible to everyone, or is it more countercultural?
great. So this, I mean, I think we should try to get there. And I try to figure out how to make it the one over the other. But like I do the balance I want to think through is look, it just is the case that there are so many students who we want to be reaching and who deserve to be reached, for whom that model of straight-laced yeshiva Talmud Torah seriousness is just not the wavelength they're working on. That's not what's going to serve them. That's not what's going to pull them in. And even if like, and we believe, it is really deep conviction, this is actually what they need. This is actually what they're in the world to do. This is actually what they should be focused on. And our long-term goal, our aspiration, at least in principle, should be to move them in that direction. That's not what they are right now. And so also like, I know, like I would love to just give a high level Gemara shir and like call it that, and then have some conversation with students over Shabbos meals or whatever. That's not good enough. We have to do social programming. We like organized a ski trip a few weeks ago. No Torah content at all. I just went on a ski trip, and like there was kosher food, but beyond that, there's no Jewish content. And it was with their nerdy Jewish friends. But there has to be that kind of stuff. And also we have to be who we are. And I will say now at this point in the conversation, I think that JLIC is actually just incredibly powerfully successful at doing this work. It means that we may not get the same kind of engagement numbers as other organizations, because there is a barrier to not a barrier to entry, but like we are asking something of our students. We're pushing them to do something real and serious and meaningful. Not everybody's going to want that, but also, and like there are going to be times when I put on a shiur and nobody comes, because it just nobody was able to, even those students who normally would be interested in, they had their P sets due or whatever else, it just wasn't going to happen. And over time, and I would say like even with the students who like may not engage in our programming directly at first, I think what we see is that over time they recognize that we are in the business of serious Judaism, and authentic Judaism, and that when they do have questions, or when they are going through something challenging, or where they are just exploring their identity and wanting something more, they will come to us. And that be sometimes that's while they're in college, they're still here, it's sophomore, junior, senior year, and sometimes it's 5 years later. And I remember, right, the rabbi Rebbitzin on campus, who I know is the one who I should be going to for the serious stuff, is the JLIC professional.
Look, I also just used this term a couple minutes ago, and I want to take issue with it because it's still like ringing around in my head.
Yeah.
You said straight laced, and Alex, you are many things. You are not straight laced.
I appreciate that, and I take it as a compliment, Don. And maybe that's part of what we need to explore is I do think this kind of seriousness that I'm talking about, actually, like, it does have to be conjoined with playfulness. And I think part of the the recipe for success is in getting that balance right, and just realizing that they're not really in conflict. Like I think there are ways to do playfulness or there are ways to just be totally unserious, and to have no content, and for there to be no standards and nothing genuinely meaningful. And maybe the right way to put it is like that's not really playful either. That's also just totally flat. That playfulness comes from, and is actually just like the theory of games, right? Games have rules. And then you figure out within the rules how to experiment, how to be creative, how to do new things, come up with new strategies. But you do need rules and structure and rigor and training and discipline for a game to be fun, to allow for genuine playfulness. But thanks for that. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that we're being accurate here. And JLIC, maybe we need to unpack a little bit. What does it mean for JLIC to be straight laced? Because that's not something that you are.
Yeah, I appreciate it. And I should also say I've accused us of being nerdy. There are a lot of very cool JLIC trainers who are just genuinely cool in every sense of the term.
Debatable.
Look, I think it's real. And look, it's cool. It's cool within a certain frame. I think it's still within and grounded in a sense of real seriousness and depth, which, as you put it, you call it countercultural, call it not cool, but it is the opposite of a kind of shallow popular cool, the kind of thing that gets you millions of followers on TikTok or whatever it is. I once, as an experiment, was playing around with social media and just trying to understand, like, is there a potentially redeemable use of Twitter? And my conclusion was no. But my experiment was, what if I tried to condense Pachad Yitzhak Mamarim into tweet length summaries? And it got a little bit of traction, and I thought it was a cool project. But some people were excited about it. But when I say some people are excited about it, like the number is probably 7, like in the universe. It's just, these are not like mass appeal kinds of things. And maybe even the more precise way to put it is that we are not doing programming. We are not like the program of JLIC. The model is not engineered, tailored towards maximizing numbers. That's just not right. Like, we have a fixed population we're working with. It's people who either went through the day school system or some connection with observant Jewish life, or who are interested in being a part of the community built around observant Jewish life. But we're not like trying to get thousands of people in the doors just for the sake of it. We're trying to build a community around a set of values, and then for the doors to be as wide open as possible.
Do you ever find that approach to be hard?
Hard in what way?
I was hoping you wouldn't answer that
No.
or ask that. I was hoping you wouldn't ask that.
Yeah, I'd say it is sometimes tricky, but it's also like there's a safety to it, and the balance can be complicated. I think I certainly want to be available to everybody, and I want to learn from everybody. I want to build relationships with people, Jews from all walks of life. I think where it does get tricky, I think where I've tried to really put myself forward as a rabbi for the just broader Jewish community. And let's say I want to do I have done a Talmud class that is geared towards people with no background, and who are coming from a different world. That can be in tension with being the rabbi for an Orthodox Jewish community, and like my home being the space for the Orthodox Jewish community, because the people coming from outside that world identify me with this strange, foreign, intimidating, bizarre set of practices, in this like closed, insular community. And I need that to be true, because I need the Orthodox students to understand that as like a home for them. But then that does make it hard to then pull in people from, whereas if I were just putting myself forward as like I'm just the generic rabbi, everybody, like I would lose something that I was trying to give to the Orthodox students, but I would gain on the other end. Getting that balance right has been tricky.
How often do you find yourself thinking, oh, there are all these students who I could really help? Like, if only I could be a little bit less countercultural in the way that JLIC wants us to be.
Actually, pretty regularly. Like the part of the strength of the JLIC model is I do know what our mission is. I know what I'm supposed to be doing here, and I believe in it because I think it works. I see it working, and a lot of it is actually like there's always a sense of mourning is a very strong word to use here. There's a sense of loss. Like yeah, I was like I do see this other adjacent mission, call it Kiruv, whatever else, and I can't do that fully. But it's because I'm doing this other incredibly rich, beautiful, powerful thing. And also, I see the. Sorry, my phone is ringing.
Sounds like you're in the set of The Office.
Yeah, I see the. I do see the success of our JLIC model, even for this other mission. So it's going to be more limited. Again, we're not going to maximize numbers, but there will be some number of people who, and it requires them to have the self confidence to be in a strange, intimidating space where they don't know all the lingo and they don't have the background. So it takes a special person. But again, like if we create this inclusive, serious, rigorous space, but also just are welcoming and warm and kind and generous to everyone, then some number of them will just want to be a part of that space, and they will come in. Some of them will stay there permanently. Some of them will just be enriched by it. And like so many of the deepest relationships I've made with students here been with students like that, where they're like the Orthodox students, they've been a part of this forever, and many of them are jaded. And honestly, like I know it is a fact that the students who want the most to do with me and the students who want the least to do with me are Orthodox day school graduates. And there's some number of them who still, this is what they want, this is who they are, this is what they want to do every single day, and they want our support and just want to do it in partnership with us. And there are many students who like they've had enough. They did their 12 years, maybe the year in Israel, and they want to do something else in college. Maybe they'll go back after college, maybe they won't, but like that is just not what they're interested in right now. And they make the assumption that I'm like going to be like their high school rebbe and I'm going to be checking their tzitzis and whatever, and I'm judging them. Maybe on some level I am, but like I'm really, really trying not to, and surely would never express that. It's all well, maybe not. I do want to come back. Like again, I do think we should be communicating like some real standards and expectations. But obviously, the dominant mode will be love and caring, and like I'm really not pressuring anybody. They often learn that over time. Like they like are very standoffish. Like first, second semester, like will like look the other way, won't make eye contact, and they realize like actually I'm not that bad, and then they'll re-engage later. But so
how do you justify not doing what you can in order to reach people that you're almost intentionally not reaching by restricting your tactics the way that JLIC wants us to?
I don't want to speak too strongly and say that there's no other option. There is another way of doing this. I just think that like ultimately what we're after, if even when we're trying to reach the most people, what we're after is building a distinctive form of thickly woven, deeply committed community around a set of rigorous values and practices. And that engineering larger numbers just doesn't get you there. And I think this is actually just essential to the nature of what Judaism is as a proposition. Like lo mirubchem mikol amim. Like God, like this was the idea was never that all of humanity would, or maybe it was right at the beginning, or at least God realizes that all of humanity is not fit for this. It's not a good way to do it. Let's pick one family and focus on them. And then even then, like it's just we're about to be Pesach, like midrashim, like only 2% or 20%, 2% of the Jewish people go out of Egypt. Like it's just, and this has been the case at every stage. Like people assimilate, people don't want to be a part of it. And we should care for them. We should reach out to them. We should make sure they know they can come back, and we should have as big a tent as possible. But at the end of the day, like, we need to focus on doing what we do positively and building the community we want to build, and then getting as many people as we can to be a part of it. But it's not about. I think the point is that it's not about the. It can't be about the number. It has to be about what we believe in. And then if the wager is that if we focus on what we believe in, then not everybody will come, but real numbers will come. And that will be what ultimately sustains the community. Whereas if we just try to engineer numbers, we'll wind up compromising on our values. And then that will actually lead to the dissolution of the community long term. And like, this is borne out in every form of liberal religion, which I identify with in some ways, as I don't want to like totally, certainly not trashing on it, but like every time there is a relaxation of standards, often with the very best of intentions, you do often see long-term attrition, and there's a balance there.
It's interesting that you say a relaxation of standards, because the standards that you're talking about are kind of objective halachic standards. But can you see the converse also being the case? Is you could say like the relaxation, it seems that we're talking about, it's not the relaxation necessarily of halachic standards, but the relaxation of some sort of values.
Yeah, so I think this is actually a great segue into, there are a couple pieces of Torah I wanted to look at that like I come back to in thinking about this. I don't have a like perfect home run Devar Torah for this, but I have a couple ideas that at least make sense in my mind. There's one passage in the Rambam in Perek Chelek, in the commentary to the Mishnah, and so it's more like the Rambam has this like highly intellectualist, elitist conception of what Judaism really is. And here it's not like we're talking about halachic Torah study based Judaism versus the other ways of engaging, or just not engaging at all. And for the Rambam, like the baseline is, everyone's a halachic Jew. They're halachically observant and they study Torah in the traditional form. But that, the Rambam says, like, if you are maximally compliant with halacha and you're a master of the Talmudic tradition, so you are on the like outside of the castle walls. Like the the people who are inside the king's chamber are the people who understand the deeper underlying philosophical secrets that the halacha and agadah represent. And so in the commentary of the Mishnah, he's starting from Kol Yisrael Yesh Lahem Chelek Olam Haba. Every Jewish person has a share in the world to come. And he says all of these people, he goes through 5 different gradations or groupings of people who have various forms of materialist conception, like crude, from his perspective, crude conceptions of what the world to come is and what the reward and the purpose of doing mitzvot is. There's to enjoy various material goods long term. And then he says he's going to try to convince you that no, that's not what Judaism is really about. Even though, and you read the Torah and like the promise for doing the mitzvot is you get rain and harvest and bounty and safety and flourishing. He says no, that's not what it's really about. But then why is it? He says that why is it that the Torah is framed that way? Well, why do we talk about these things? And also in the back of his head, it's or not the back of his head, it's pretty on the surface. It's if the most important part of Judaism really is these deeper transcendent philosophical secrets that require rigorous training and often esoteric training in private to achieve, but like highly specialized work. If that's the case, if that's what it's really about, then why do we have Torah and mitzvot, which anybody can do and are fundamentally democratic and are there on the surface? You just pick up the book and read it. Why do we have that? And so this is what he says. I'm going to read it in English because it was written in Arabic and I don't read Arabic. Place it in your mind that when they bring a young boy to a teacher to teach him Torah, and that is the greatest good for him as to what he can attain of wholeness. But due to his few years and the weakness of his intellect, he does not understand the level of this good and that which will come to him of wholeness from it. So we know that Torah is good for the child. The child doesn't know that. And therefore, it is necessary perforce but also this won't work if the child isn't motivated. Like you can't just force the child to do it. So necessary perforce the teacher who is more whole than he to encourage, or she, to encourage the study. Robin doesn't think that, but we do. To encourage the study with things that are beloved to him due to the smallness of his years. And so he says to him, read, and I will give you nuts or figs, and I will give you a little honey. Just the news this week was that Reese's Pieces are apparently now Parv, according to the OU. Really exciting. I have very, very good memories of my childhood Rebbe and guitar teacher, Dan Morris. I don't have any reason to think he listens to this podcast, but a really wonderful man. And I remember sitting on Shabbos morning and him doing Parsha questions with us, and he would give us. It wasn't Reese's Pieces; it was peanut butter M&Ms, and they were so good.
Nice.
And
I've been using Skittles.
yeah, amazing. And yeah, like that actually still to this day shapes what Torah is for me. I associate it with the deliciousness of peanut butter flavored M&Ms.
That's awesome.
And obviously his warmth and care and went with it. And through this, he will read and exert himself, not for the actual reading. There's a judgment here. The Rambam is like, this kid, he's just learning Torah so he can get the figs and nuts. He doesn't care about the Torah. He just cares about the figs. But rather so that they will give him that food. And the eating of this delight's more precious in his eyes than the reading and the great good, without a doubt. And so he thinks of the study as labor and effort. He's like, I have to go through this unfortunate process of learning Torah so that they will give me the things I want. But he works through it, and he gets the nut or portion of honey. When he grows and his intellect becomes stronger, and that thing that was weighty for him before becomes light in his eyes. Now he doesn't care about figs and honey. So they encourage him rather for that thing that's beloved to him. So now he likes fancier things, and or more sophisticated goods. So his teacher says to him, read, and I will buy you fine shoes or lovely clothes. And then this process continues with like an increasingly sophisticated extrinsic good that's used as the motivator for Talmud Torah, until eventually the child is grown and has been on this educational process, and then the child can come to understand that no, actually Torah is valuable for Torah's sake, and then no longer needs the extrinsic motivations. But there's like what the Rambam gets, and like he's using the child as the paradigm, but this is true, I think, just obviously for all of us all the time. And we can quote other Mamari Chazal to this effect. That like, yeah, obviously the ideal is pure spiritual, intellectual worship of God without any extrinsic motivation, purely for the sake of worship and obligation and duty. That is a kind of ideal. And some of us are children, but like we're all human beings. And we want peanut butter M&Ms, and we want barbecues and good feeling social events, and just like being in the room with the right group of people that make us feel included and good. And we also like, it's been a really long day of classes, and I've been challenged and trying to prove myself and stressed out about that the whole day. And I do not have the time or patience or wherewithal for a rigorous Gemara class where I also will feel anxious and insecure because actually my skills are not as good as I think everybody else thinks they should be. And that's not what I want right now. And so I'm not going to go to that. And so the balance I get from this is that like we as educators, like, yeah, we have to, and it shouldn't be in the condescending sense of we need to treat our students as children. I'm using this like, I think this is ourselves, this is just human beings. We should understand that as human beings, we need to be providing extrinsic motivation. And that's fine. It's good. Like the Rambam presents this is obviously what you do for educational purposes. And like, there's no embarrassment about it. It's not a concession. It's just what it is. And also, I think what's critical about it is in this image, so the child comes to get the figs and honey, but what they do is learn Torah. So the seriousness and the rigor is there, right? And there's like, the Rambam doesn't fully spell it out, but there's some pedagogical trajectory here that's planned out, and that you are communicating even already to the child that, like, yeah, we want you to have the honey because you deserve it and you're doing great work. And also, where we're trying to get you is to a place where you start appreciating more sophisticated, more elevated goods, and eventually towards where you just see this as intrinsically valuable in just what you do, and you don't need the M&Ms. We're accommodating. Accommodating again is too strong. It's we are showing up for. We're caring for the wholeness of our students. They're human beings with just desires, needs, like just that are completely legitimate and good. It's a part of who they are, and we should be honoring it. And when they say, like, I want my Jewish life and to be about also about barbecues and ski trips and having fun, yeah, that's a great thing. Like, they want to be a part of Jewish life. Like, they could do the social things in all kinds of other ways. Again, they could just be going to the frat party, and no, they like want to sit with their nerdy Jewish friends and have an own, like, that's amazing. And there are ways to, like, sustain even within that, like, if it's just going to be a few minutes of Talmud Torah, or it's going to be a shir that doesn't require too much of them intellectually, but still there's like some core of real depth to it, and like there's something serious that we're moving on, even if it's just like turning the dial one notch. But they see that, like, we're the ones who's like, yeah, the dial should be turned just a little bit. We should be pushing just a little bit, and like remembering like what really ultimately matters and moving towards that symptotically, and then we get on the way to where we're going.
Tell me how that relates to what we were talking about before.
You know, I mentioned other organizations, which again, a lot of respect for, who do much like Jewishly thinner programming, and certainly like just less programming that involves much less expectation of rigorous spiritual or intellectual work, where the kind of Jewish experience they're offering is just more directly consumable, and like meant it's treated as a like consumer commodity. It's like we put this out in the market, often, you know, we're paying students, but even like without that, it's just like you just come and get this great thing, delicious barbecue and a lot of booze and a good time, and there are no expectations whatsoever. Maybe there's some kind of framing or Torah, or just like you're just in a Jewish environment, and that's wonderful. That does have the effect of maximizing numbers, and it's very good for that purpose. The opposite end, where I've felt the temptation, and I think part of, again, like how JLIC was conceived, was like, no, we're just going to come here and set up a Beit Midrash, and anybody who wants to come will come, and anybody who doesn't want to come doesn't. We're not going to serve them. And you know, again, at some level, I still identify with that, but also that can't be that. That's not enough. Like, we need to. I think we're aspiring to take both ends. There's so many good ideas flying around in the JLIC staff chat all the time, like just great, fun, clean social programs that are just good and make people want to show up and just feel cared for and loved and just have a nice time. And that's not, I think it's important for us spiritually as educators. Like, it's not just an apparatus to rope people in. It's not just a concession to their weakness. Like, no, they should be just, no, we should be doing this to them because this is actually a part of who they are as Jews. And it matters. And we should be caring for them in that way. And then also on the other end, but like, no, we still are focused on this ultimate goal of doing Torah and mitzvot in this rigorous, high level way. And we like, that's where we're trying to get. And like, ideally it's without extrinsic motivation. Like, that ideal is still communicated, expressed, and what we're after. And that does mean, I think we're not going to be as popular. But I think that for those students we do reach, the depth and the long-term trajectory is where we see the payoff. I will say, I think I've noticed a trend, even in my 8 years here, within the Orthodox community, towards, I would say, like, really less interest in high-level Talmud Torah, and more interest in broader Orthodox, like, especially male meat and booze culture. It's a real thing, and like more of that. And actually, like I want to put a really positive spin on this. I can't prove this, but this is my wager. If I'm seeing that trajectory, I'm seeing an increase in that demographic. That actually, what's happening is not that there are fewer people who are interested in the just like classic, what I'm calling straight laced yeshiva style stuff. Maybe that's true, maybe it's not. But actually, that orthodoxy is like the institutions in Israel are creating pathways for students who are like, that's just not where they are. They're not learning Gemara all day. That's not what they're about. But we're creating pathways for them to feel engaged and feel fully a part of the Jewish community and to like make a claim that the Jewish community should be and that the firm Jewish community should be catering directly to their needs. So I think what I'm feeling is whereas in the past some of these students may have just like understood that they were on the margins, that like the real community was constituted by the people who did 3 years in Gush. Now, like those people, that broader penumbra is like, no, we're here too, and the community should cater to us, we're like directly. And I want to say like, yes, we should. It's been a struggle for me, but I think it's vital. We should be building a community where they feel directly cared for, and also I will continue to give high level divrei Torah, even when students come in like, can't you do something a little fluffier? And my answer is no, because that's not what I do. And I think we really like, and I like the fundamental character of what we are and what we're about is like, yeah, no, the ideal still is like doing really rigorous work, even if that's not where you are right now. And I'm going to continue to put that forward, even if it makes me like somewhat less popular.
Can you tell us some of the ways in which you've found yourself pivoting?
I think it really just being a lot more intentional and programmatic about doing like just straight social programming, which again, like we've certainly done. That's not a new thing, but like recognizing that like there's a just direct constituency here that needs serving in this way. But then really, it's like still thinking strategically and very carefully, pedagogically about what the overall package of programs is and like what they still like what's understood as the ethos here. And I should say, Don, like I have not figured this out. And I also like I think rabbis, educators, and just anybody involved in Jewish communities, like everywhere, has to work this through. Like, and I think that we've actually, I'm talking about my experience here at Yale. I think to some extent, we have a very weird population here. And I say weird in the most loving way possible. They are like hyper intellectual, many of them, and have that kind of orientation. And so, like, yeah, if I just do, like, come spend a few hours learning Rishim and Shkup and Kant with me, like, there will actually be people who show up, and then like I can feel like I'm doing a good job because yeah, like there's actually a group that wants that, or like come learn Zohar, like people will do it. And in the actual just like real life, in real universe, in real communities, that's just not where most people are. And every single Jew actually does matter, even if they're not rigorously intellectual in that way. And like getting that balance right of how we like as those of us who have rigorous yeshiva educations and think about Yiddishkeit in those terms, where that's the ideal, and then we're working with people who it's like either we've never encountered it, they never will encounter it, or it's just not on the table for them. How do we sustain what we believe in and love while genuinely loving the forms of Jewish engagement that these other people need?
Have you found ways to engage people in Torah learning, the demographic that you think is growing in their interests in being involved in Jewish life, but not necessarily the high level stuff?
You know what? I've had we've had some success, and also I don't feel like I'm anywhere near where it should be. Let's say like the groups we've done best with here, and are those people with just the strong yeshiva backgrounds and the nerds from the broader Jewish community. So like I'll do maybe I mentioned it earlier in the session. I've done a just like intro Talmud class that is geared towards people who don't have any background at all. And some of the most just incredibly rich, amazing relationships I've had have come from that. But that also is hyper intellectual. It's like the kind of student who shows up and is like, no, I actually want to sit with an old fashioned Vilna Shas and a Jastro and look up every single word. And the student who I have the ones who I have particularly in mind 7 years ago, I was just talking about a Nodi Yehuda with the other day. That happens. So like still we're talking about an intellectual elite. We're gonna do a matzah baking event. We're gonna make our own matzah next
Cool.
week for Pesach, and that's something that there is I'm very intentional. There is a real Talmud Torah element in it. We may even look at the text inside about the importance of making your own matzah, the meaning of making your own matzah, and like actually study the regulations and what they mean and how they work. We're not going to do it real in depth because we don't have that much time. But like mostly we're just going to be getting our hands dirty making matzah. Like that kind of, there's like an experiential element, but there's also this like framework of like real rigor and depth that we're communicating.
Yeah, thanks so much for helping us think about this a little bit. I think that this podcast hopefully will be going out really close to Pesach, if not Erev Pesach, and people who listen to it might be listening to it after the Seder's already. But it seems like what you've been trying to focus on is what the Seder wants us to focus on, which is finding different ways to help people engage with the Torah and with our tradition. And it could be through super experiential stuff like making or eating matzah. It could be about the hyper intellectual Magid thing, but even within the hyper intellectual stuff, it's not supposed to be hyper intellectual. There are all different types of people who learn and how they learn, and the point of the whole Seder, I think, is to make sure that we engage people and that we think about how we're supposed to engage people, and that it not just be limited to the Seder night, but that the Seder night is a way for us to think about how we engage.
It's really beautiful, Don. I mean,
so thanks for helping us think about it in
thank you
advance
so much,
of the Seder.
Don. Pleasure as always. Talk again soon.
Chag kasher v'sameach.